Thank you. I will now call this meeting of the Interim Joint Judiciary Committee to order. It is wonderful to have everybody here virtually. I'm sorry that we can't be in person, but of course, it's more important that we all stay safe and healthy. And so I thank you all for being here promptly. For those of you who are joining us online, I can't see you, but you can see me. And there will be a public comment period. I'm always happy to have people joining us virtually because the more people get involved now, the better our work product will be at the end of this interim session. So with that, let's go ahead and get started first just with a roll call vote. If we could have our secretary please call the roll.
Hi, everybody. This is Patrick Gannon, Committee Policy Analyst, and I will be calling the roll. If you could give me just one moment, please. I'm sorry, we'll start. Chair Schaible?
Here.
Vice Chair Nguyen?
Present.
Senator Pickard?
I am here.
Assemblywoman Krasner?
Here.
Assemblywoman Marzola?
Present.
Assemblyman O'Neill?
Here.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong?
Present.
And I'm Senator Harris. I have been informed by the chair that Senator Harris will be arriving shortly. Please take note of that, or I will take note of that when she arrives. And that's all. Chair.
All right, perfect. And so at this point, I would like everybody to just do a brief introduction. Again, I think most of us have met before in person who are on the Zoom, but for those who are joining us virtually, I want them to know who everybody here is, including our staff and our members. And then I'll go last, but let's go ahead and start with our vice chair. If you just want to, if you just want to tell everybody your name, your position, and maybe some things that you plan to do in the interim.
Hi, this is Vice Chair Rochelle Nguyen. I represent Assembly District 10. I sat as Vice Chair of Judiciary during the 81st legislative session, as well as the Chair of Health and Human Services. And I'm looking forward to this interim. I know we have a lot of substantial topics that we are hoping to be able to address over the next 9 months. And I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. Senator Pickard, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Keith Pickard. I represent Senate District 20 and practicing lawyer, and hope we can get something substantive done. Look forward to it. Thanks.
And Assemblywoman Marzola, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. My name is Elaine Marzola, and I represent Assembly District 21. This is my first interim committee. I'm excited to be here. I'm a lawyer as well, so hopefully I can learn a lot, but give a little bit of my experience to everyone as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chandra Summers Armstrong. I am the Assemblywoman for Assembly District 6 in the center of Las Vegas. I'm a freshman, just finished my first session, and this is also my first interim committee. I did sit on Judiciary during the 81st session and enjoyed it immensely. I'm not an attorney, unlike others here, but I think my life experience and my experience in the community will help me hopefully bring some interesting perspectives to the committee. I am excited about the work that we have ahead of us, and I'm hoping that we can get a lot done. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Krasner.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Lisa Krasner. I am the Assemblywoman for Nevada State Assembly District 26. I've served for 3 regular sessions and 3 special sessions in the Nevada Legislature. Each of those sessions I have served on the Judiciary Committee. I have a bachelor's degree and a Juris Doctor degree. Thank you.
Thank you. And Assemblymember O'Neill.
Morning. I'm PK. I'm the L Assembly District 40, Carson City, and parts of Washoe County, soon to include Story County with the next election. I've served on Judiciary during the during the last session, also back in 15. I look forward to being with you on this next few months as we work on some interesting topics. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to get introductions from our staff. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot if you weren't expecting to speak today, but if you could just really briefly tell us all who you are and why you're here. I'll make Patrick go first, because I know he's done this before.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks. This is Patrick Gannon. As the chair mentioned, I am one of the two committee policy analysts on the committee from the research division. I have been with the research division for going on 20 years, and for the last several sessions and interims during the sessions, I have staffed the Senate Judiciary Committee, and during the interim, I have staffed the Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice Committee, which this is now taken over. So I'm staffing both committees this interim, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a very productive and busy interim, and I'm honored to be committee staff. So thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Thornton?
Thank you, Chair. Diane Thornton. I am also an analyst like Patrick. I'm the counterpart on the Assembly, and I've been with the LCB for about 14 years, and last several I've staffed Assembly Judiciary. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. O'Krent?
Good morning. My name is Carly. I will be the legal counsel for this. I've been with LCB for about 10 years and staffed various committees during the legislative session. This will be my first session doing judiciary, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to having you. Mr. Malone?
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Chair. I'm James Malone. I work in the fiscal division of the Legislative Council Bureau. I started with LCB back in 2018. I've been through 2 legislative sessions. The fiscal division staffs the money committees during the session and the interim finance committee during the interim. Major assignments in our team include the Department of Public Safety, the Nevada Department of Corrections. This will be the first policy committee that I staff during the interim, and I'm looking forward to assist in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think that just leaves me. My name is Melanie Schaible. I am the senator for District 9, which covers Spring Valley and the southwest part of Las Vegas. I served as the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee in the 2021 session, and I was on the committee in the 2019 session. I love the Judiciary Committee and all of the great work that we've been able to do over the last 4 years. I also chaired at least one joint meeting between the Senate and Assembly Judiciary Committees. So I have had the pleasure of meeting all of the members who are here, and I'm looking forward to a very productive but very busy interim session. I'm also an attorney, and I've been in Las Vegas for about the past 6 years, but I'm originally from Northern Nevada, so both hold a special place in my heart. Just to give you guys a little bit of perspective on how I expect this committee to function this year. We are in the an uncharted territory, not so much with Zoom, that is old news now, but with the new interim committee structure. There is no longer an ACHA, there is no longer a sentencing subcommittee, there is no longer a juvenile justice and welfare committee or study. There are no more interim studies. So the Judiciary Committee is going to be taking over a lot of those responsibilities. As you may have noticed, there are only a few of us. There are, I believe, 8 members. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members of this committee to cover all of those topics. You may have seen, the work plan was emailed to all of you. There's also a work plan available online that generally gives an overview of the topics that we'll be covering at each meeting. The purpose there is to allow members and non-members, to allow members of the community, other members of the legislature, other stakeholders, your constituents to come together, have conversations about the topic areas that we're looking at in between the meetings, and then come to the meeting with policy proposals, with updates, with roadmaps for the discussions that we need to be having here in the committee. And by way of, just a couple of ground rules, I do like to start on time. We started very close to on time today, and I really appreciate that. I will be starting our meetings at 9 a.m. With or without you. So it's not a big deal if you're not on time. Just know that you'll be coming into a meeting that's already started. And we also here try to be very inclusive and respectful. I know that you guys have all done a fantastic job of that over the last, 2 years since we started during the regular session. One way that we do that in the Judiciary Committee is that you can just call me Chair or Chair Schaible. No need to put Madam Chair in front of it. I won't be offended if you do, but I'm just trying to move away from some of those gendered titles that we use, and you'll hear me calling the members of the Assembly sometimes instead of Assemblywoman or Assemblyman, because I think it still captures the scope of their job. So with that being said, I am happy to answer any questions that members have about the structure of this committee or the plan moving forward. I think if you look at our agenda, we are going to go through the committee brief, and we do have the committee work plan. So that might be a more appropriate time for those specific questions. But I do want to, since we're not in-person setting, I just wanted to open it up real briefly in case there are initial questions from any members. All right, I'm not seeing any. So that will take us officially to agenda item number 2, which is public comment. There are 4 ways to participate in public comment. The first one is by calling in, and I will read those numbers aloud right now. It is 669-900-6833, and the meeting ID is 850-0743-9984. And then you have to press the pound button or the hashtag sign to be connected to the meeting. You can also email comments to us at judinterim@lcb.state.nb.us. You can mail comments to us, or you can fax comments to us at 775-684-6400. For people calling into the meeting to make public comments, we've already received a couple of written public comments, which are posted on the website. You're welcome to submit written comments and call in, or just do one or the other. But for those calling in, we will be limiting public comment to 3 minutes at this point. And we look forward to hearing from those of you who are already on the line. Broadcast, do we have people here for public comment?
Yes, Chair Schaible, we do. If you would like to offer public comment on today's meeting, please press *9 now or raise hand in your Zoom window.
Thank you, Chair Schaible, Vice Chair Nguyen, committee members. This is Nick Schipec, Nickshepak, State Deputy Director with the Fines and Fees Justice Center. On behalf of myself, State Director Lisa Mosley, and the FFJC staff, we want to wish everyone a productive and meaningful interim. Fines and fees are impacted at every level of the criminal justice system, from who we arrest and charge, to how we handle corrections, to how we deal with court supervisions and beyond. We look forward to actively working and learning with you all this interim. We're excited for the next 8 months and wish you all the very best. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You may begin.
Fantastic. Good morning, committee. My name is Quinton Savoie. That's Quentin Sav, like Victor, WOIR.
I'm the Deputy Director at Make It Work Nevada and Make It Work Nevada Education Fund. We're also part of the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance. We just want to say good luck to the committee. We deeply appreciate this standing interim committee to address many of the issues that so many Nevadans are continuing to face. I want to let you all know that on the housing front of the work that we're doing, AB 486 has absolutely been helpful. It definitely helped curb the tsunami of evictions that we were expecting at the end of the last moratorium. However, it did not stop landlords all across the state from following the advice of the apartment association when they said raise the roof on rent back in August. Rent costs have continued to soar for every single person that we have talked to at Make It Work Nevada. Seniors, non-Black people, Black folks, Latinx folks, everyone's rent has gone up, and they are crying out for our legislators to do something about it. We look forward to the committee's work around studying the ban of summary eviction and how we can bring greater parity and justice to all Nevadans. But I also want us to consider a conversation around creating some type of rent stabilization so that families aren't having to make their dollars stretch even further as rents are going up dramatically. I'm thinking about one elderly woman in particular who is a retired paralegal who said her rent went up $300. And where is she supposed to get it? Because she's not earning any more money. So just please keep those real life experiences in mind as you all are governing. We'll be watching, and we deeply appreciate your leadership. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You may begin.
Okay. My name is Sonia, and I'm a member of Return Strong Families United for Justice for the Incarcerated. At the October BOPC meeting, Dr. Knott, the acting medical director at NDOC, informed the board that NDOC had vaccines and boosters available to accommodate inmates' requests. Yet our members report not being able to obtain the vaccine or boosters for the last couple of months, with little to no explanation as to why or when the vaccine or booster will be available. They have been told to fill out a kite to request the booster, then couldn't get clear information if there would be a copay required to get the vaccine, and then we're told that there would be no boosters available until February 1st. There is a wide variety of stories coming from different facilities, but the thing they have in common is lack of clear communication. At the same meeting, Dr. Knott stated that hundreds of thousands of PPE masks, face coverings had been handed out to staff and inmates. Again, our incarcerated members continue to inform us that the staff are not wearing the PPE face coverings as required. Worse than not wearing them, many of the staff who do not want to wear the face coverings taunt members by coughing into their lunch bags, or refusing to mask when asked. Even at visitation, while inmates and families are required to wear masks and are told that their visits would be ended if the masks were removed, most staff is walking around unmasked or with their masks hanging under their nose. This isn't just coming from letters at every facility. It is happening right in our faces on camera. It isn't difficult to verify, yet no one holds them accountable. The number of NDOC staff who have tested positive for COVID in the past 2 months is alarming, and yet the vaccine mandate requiring certain state employees, including NDOC staff, to be fully vaccinated has not been implemented. Staff are dismissive of the mask mandate and are openly defying it. For 2 months, staff positive numbers in the prison rose, causing staff shortages and even more inhumane conditions for incarcerated people. And now NDOC has said that due to the rising number of positive cases, they again close visitation. Just for the record, to visit, you must have a negative rapid test before entering the facility. You have to sit 6 feet apart behind plexiglass. You must be masked and have no contact, not even a hug or kiss goodbye. No contact at all. Our concern that we would like to have a public discussion about is about prison policy when it comes to the pandemic. We have learned so much that has been applied to practice in the free world, yet we are not applying any of that to people in prison. Despite the director's claims of doing such a great job managing the pandemic, Nevada received an F for the handling of the pandemic by the ACLU International. Our second edition of the Silenced Voices of the Incarcerated, researched by a researcher at the University of London, will be released in late March, which triples the sample size. Let's set aside space to discuss prison policy in terms of the pandemic by the studies of what has already come out in these reports, as well as other research by Prison Policy Institute, Crime and Justice Institute, the Vera Institute, and the ACLU, and the Marshall Project. Thank you.
Excuse me, caller. Could you please state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Sonia, Sonya, last name is Williams, Williams.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning and happy Friday. My name is Denise Colanos, DeniseboLanos, and I'm an activist with Return Strong. My husband is incarcerated on a wrongful conviction here in Nevada. He has been in the appeals process for almost 11 years, and all while serving time for a crime he didn't commit. One of the things that drew me to Return Strong was their fight for justice. I was just one person trying to figure out how I could help my husband or how I could contribute to somehow making things better for others in the same situation of having a loved one incarcerated and all the hurdles that comes with. When I came across this group, I realized just how many of us there are that are so impacted by injustice in some way, shape, or form. And I remember when all this happened with my husband, we really believed in the justice system. We believed that truth would prevail and that in the end, justice would be served. We believed that el que nada debe, nada teme, which means he who owes nothing fears nothing. And I think that innate belief in the system made the conviction all the more heartbreaking. But today we are no longer those people, and today we no longer believe that justice and equality can happen without a fight. So today I'm here to ask you to consider initiating a conversation about a sentencing review board. While Nevada offers the pardons board and clemency, it does not come close to addressing the changes to sentencing and the shifts that have occurred over the past few years to address the injustices that have occurred in sentencing. We're all aware of them. I don't think anyone can deny the historic problems that are reflected in Nevada's prison population. The ridiculously high number of elderly people who have spent 30, 40, and more years in prison for crimes that have had the sentences changed, yet their sentences, knowing that they are knowingly excessive, have never been reviewed. People who were sentenced under mandatory minimum laws and habitual criminal laws that have now changed, but we have never retroactively reviewed those sentences to address or correct them. Reviewing cases of women who were charged as co-defendants in a crime in which they were very often abused by the actual perpetrator of the crime out of fear or under the influence of another person. They drove a getaway car, lured someone into a robbery, only for that to result in a murder that they didn't commit and didn't have a choice in making, yet they languish in prison with life sentences for 30 plus years, often longer than the person who committed the murder under felony murder one laws, which require no intent. We should be reviewing the cases that should have been considered retroactively under the passage of AB 236, yet weren't because of the financial impact to the state. Yes, the pardon and clemency process exists, but it is so limited that it can never correct the sentencing issues that have resulted in excessive incarceration for decades. So let's talk about that. Let's start looking for solutions. Let's be a leader in justice and not the last state to do the right thing, dragged in, kicking and screaming. Thank you.
My name is Beth Rhodes, an activist with Return Strong Families United for Justice of the Incarcerated. In October of 2021, the Silenced Voices of the Incarcerated preliminary report was published, highlighting the inhumane living conditions of those incarcerated in Nevada Department of Corrections. Many individuals incarcerated within NDOC suffer from medical neglect, abuse, lack of mental physical stimulation, and unsanitary living conditions, which was only exacerbated by the pandemic. Return Strong Families United for Justice for the Incarcerated has asked NDOC numerous times to hold regular meetings to discuss the issues within their walls and work together with the loved ones of the incarcerated towards resolutions. NDOC has not come to the table to meet with Return Strong, nor have they been willing to work with the families to secure the needs of the incarcerated. For almost 2 years, we have been forced to use public comments to tell our side of the story in 2-minute segments in order to be sure that the conditions inside Nevada's prisons are on public record. While NDOC has had the privilege to share their half-truth and public relations version of a story that doesn't exist at the table with every governmental group, the legislature, Board of Prison Commissioners, the Sentencing Commission, no one is asking the right questions, the hard questions. I want to share a quote by Howard Zinn from A People's History of the United States. He says, "The cry of the poor is not always just, but if you don't listen to it, you will never know what justice is." We have letters from incarcerated people who share horrific stories of the trauma that is happening behind those walls. They end their letters with the scrawled handwriting that you would see on a car window of a person in danger. Please help. Help us. Please help me. It's letter after letter after letter, begging for help. We are asking that you listen to us. Give Return Strong a seat at the table and allow us to give an actual depiction of what's happening inside Nevada's prisons, and then demand real answers from NDOC. The vast majority of the incarcerated are going to be returning to our communities, and they are traumatized. The memories of the past 2 years will not go away. They will not forget, and we will not allow anyone else to forget. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Keisha Gibbs. I'm an activist with Return Strong Fuji and part of an impacted family. My brother was incarcerated at a very young age for his participation in a robbery that resulted in a death. While he wasn't the person that committed the murder and he wasn't given a death sentence, he was given consecutive, extremely long sentences as a teenager. Sadly, after serving 17 years, he was diagnosed with cancer and passed away in prison last year. His story and many others paint a picture of the inhumanity that occurs in Nevada when your loved one is ill. Not just the living conditions and inhumanity, but the neglectful medical care. My brother's care was delayed for so long, and he was getting sicker by the day that he punched himself in the face and gave himself a bloody nose to trick medical staff into taking him to the hospital, where he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Getting information on his medical condition and care, even once he was in hospice, was a nightmare. It was a fight every day to get NDOC to communicate with us at all. And when they did, half the time it was not accurate or truthful. He suffered all day, every day, not just because of the cancer, but because of the lack of care, concern, or medical treatment. His story isn't an isolated incident. Sonia, who is here today too, had a very similar experience. Both of us were denied visitation with our loved ones and never got to say goodbye to them. Sonia and her 6-year-old daughter were kicked out of a visit because the little girl ran to her father and hugged him when they brought him out in the wheelchair. They threw them out of the visit, suspended visits for 6 months, and gave him a write-up. He died a few days before Christmas, and that child never got to see her father again. She hadn't seen him since before COVID. The thing is, it doesn't have to be this way, and Sonia and I and Return Strong have vowed to not let their deaths be in vain. We will use their stories and others to make sure that no one can hide from the truth of the humane depravity that is occurring through NDOC. Families from Return Strong have been working on revisions to a national prison family bill of rights that would make basic human rights and communication possible for Nevada prison families and their incarcerated loved ones. Basic things like be treated with respect by prison officials and staff, to be notified in a timely manner of a loved one's illness or hospitalization, to be given extended visits in cases of hospitalization. During COVID, people were dying in hospitals, and the families were not even made aware that they had been moved to a hospital or were in ICU or on life support until they got a call stating their family member had died. We would like space to present our prison family bill of rights that we are planning to bring to the legislative session and hope to roll it out here. This isn't a partition issue. This is about family and community and the ethical treatment of human beings, both incarcerated and free. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jody Hocking, Hocking. I'm the founder and director of Return Strong Fuji. And we're really excited actually about the interim Judiciary Committee meetings and hopeful that we'll be able to have space to talk about some of the issues that we're bringing to the table today. I know that there's so many things that could be discussed and time is so limited. We understand all of that and appreciate all of you who care about the things that are happening in real life to our families, to our loved ones, and how that impacts our collective communities. Today, I want to touch on something that's been a constant frustration for us, and I honestly don't know if this is the place or if there is an answer, but ultimately our question is this: how do we hold government accountable? Specifically for us, NDOC, but generally speaking too. During the 81st session, we all worked to get a bill passed unanimously, AB 241, which provides credits to offenders for the time that they were losing during the pandemic, not due to anything within their control. The bill was supposed to give credits to people retroactively and proactively if programming didn't resume. NDOC was taking each of those days. You guys were all there during this discussion, 5 days a month away from people because they couldn't program. Again, not their own fault. Since the bill was passed, NDOC applied credits, but not according to the legislative intent of that bill. There were multiple types of credits: days, which is how they took them, and meritorious credits, which are the equivalent of approximately 31% of a day, which is how they gave them back to incarcerated people. So instead of 60 days, they got back about 20. And even though programming is not resumed, nothing is then applied going forward. Every single hearing, piece of testimony, discussion, and the passage of the bill showed clear legislative intent and what the bill was designed to do. But NDOC found a loophole around the word credit and has applied that incorrectly. In addition, they have interfered in due process by blocking grievances on the issue so that incarcerated people can't get the issue into the courts due to the Prison Reform Act. Even crazier is the fact that during the legislative session, NDOC and the governor both acknowledged that they could fix this without legislation. The director has the authority to give 7 days a month, not 5, without anyone's approval. But he doesn't do that voluntarily. They block it from the courts, and literally we can't get it corrected. And as a result, people are spending more time in prison than they ever should have. And we can't find help anywhere. I've emailed everyone about this issue back in July and August, and while a few people were concerned, nobody has answers. It baffles me that a law that was passed has no means of enforcement if the lawbreaker is a state agency or the director of that agency. While I understand our question of who holds them accountable, if the governor won't, isn't really a purpose of this committee, the answer remains who does hold them accountable. If the courts can't, if legislators' hands are tied, how is it possible that this can happen and everything just goes unaddressed? I want to throw out one more Howard Zinn quote for today, and it's that the memory of oppressed people is one thing that cannot be taken away. And for such people with such memories, revolt is always an inch below the surface. Not just because of AB 241 or the deductions or sentencing or medical neglect or compassionate release or denied due process or trauma that has been impacted by incarcerated people through the mishandling of the pandemic. They're not going to forget, and we are never going to forget how so many of our cries have really gone and been unanswered. Some of you on this committee have been our only source of help, and we appreciate you more than you know. But the revolution has been rumbling for several years, and the pain is starting to come to the surface. We're hoping to have that discussion here this year. Thank you.
Hello. Good morning. My name is Ayanna, Ayanna Simmons Oglesby, the latter Oglesby. I am here today with Return Strong Families United for Justice for the Incarcerated. I know that today you're working on identifying issues that you will work on during the interim session. We came today to bring some ideas that we would like to have considered as part of your work this year. This statement is about one of them. Over the past year and a half, we have talked to hundreds of incarcerated people who have applied for the Pardoning Board. Many of them who have applied multiple times, year after year after year, who were not denied a board, but never to have ever been given an opportunity to be added to the agenda, or have their case heard, and to never even get a response as to why they did not get chosen. We understand the sheer volume of applications that are put before the board. It is daunting to review them all and pick the worthiest candidates, and then to also respond to all those applicants. But imagine being on the other side of that and sitting and waiting and never understanding why you were not chosen when you spent 20 years trying to do only the right thing to atone for your crime. We have observed and studied every single pardons board for the past year and a half to gain an understanding of what is involved and how it works. We have studied all the eligibility rules and looked for the inherent bias that exists in the pardons board process, and ultimately have found so many broken pieces that we believe there needs to be a public conversation and a full study on the pardons board process. The pardons process is supposed to give people a second chance, but at the moment, it is so wrought with the same inequity that exists in the criminal justice system that second chances never come for many worthy candidates. Certain attorneys are guaranteeing people seats on the agenda 2 years in advance. Families are expected to pay between $15,000 and $50,000 for an attorney to represent them at the board. At the last board, one attorney set their fee at $50,000, had 5 people on the agenda. That's ludicrous. How is that even possible? That same attorney is promising people on the agenda. How is that even possible again? That same attorney promising seats months, years before the agenda is decided. How is that possible? Yet when we have approached people to get a sponsor, we were told that we can't circumvent the process. Our question is, what process? Money, power, privilege? The entire process reeks of secrecy, privilege, racism, and injustice. A process that is supposed to equalize injustices and give true second chances does anything but. We are asking to open that discussion and to consider making this a study during session. We need a full 50-state study on the pardon process and to build towards a just process in Nevada. Let's start this discussion here. After all, we are Nevada strong and battle born. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chair Schaible. There are no other callers wishing to offer public comment at this time.
All right, thank you so much. Before we move on to our next agenda item, I just want to take a moment to seize on this momentum to talk about kind of my vision for the Interim Judiciary Committee this year, because Return Strong has knocked it out of the park with public comment. And I don't know about you guys, but I heard a lot of really important topics in there, a lot of really good ideas. I just made, a quick list of reviewing the pardons board process, the prison response to COVID-19, creating a sentencing review board, and creating a prison family bill of rights. And as I think you all can appreciate, that's just more work than one person can do, and also more work than this committee can do on Zoom for a couple of hours on a Friday morning. So what I'm hoping is that, for this, you'll notice in our work plan that we have a meeting coming up in March where we're going to talk about corrections specifically. And so what I'm hoping, and we'll get to this in item number 4 for a number of different topics, but is that, one member of this committee will really take the lead on the corrections issues. And between now and that March meeting, have some of those conversations with members of Return Strong, with members of the Department of Corrections, with other stakeholders, with me, with other members of the legislature, so that by the time we get to March, we are so much further along in this conversation that we're not just talking about a sentencing review board, but we've come up with a proposal. We've looked at different states. We've considered different approaches to a piece of legislation, and done some of the work that just can't be done in small segments once a month, but has to be done over a period of time. And I hope that it's clear that the purpose in doing this is to create more participation, not less. It's not supposed to be some kind of threshold to overcome to get onto the March agenda meeting, but to serve as a way for this committee to do ongoing work between our meetings by having different members of the committee appointed as points of contact or point people on different topics, corrections being one of them. We'll get to the rest of them in agenda item number 4. But I really think that it could be a productive way for all of us to get involved and for all of us to engage our constituents and other stakeholders so that at every single meeting from here on forward, we come to the table with as much information as possible and ideas that are, as fully developed as possible, with the opportunity to continue those discussions. I hope that that makes some sense and resonates with some of you. And with that, we're going to move on to a greater review of our committee's responsibilities. I'm going to move on to agenda item number 3 and ask our fantastic staff to give an overview of the committee brief and our duties.
Hey, thanks, Chair Schaible. This is Patrick Gannon again. And Diane Thornton and I are going to split this portion of the discussion up. Given that everybody on the committee has served on judiciary and or been in the legislature for a while and is familiar with committee briefs, we're not going to do a real deep dive into the brief, but there are a few points that we do want to make and to, obviously we'll be happy to answer questions now or later on if anybody has any. So I'm just going to try to go through this fairly quickly and then I'll turn it over to Diane. The first thing for us to note is a reiteration of the fact that we are nonpartisan staff. We work for the entire committee and we are here to help with all the committee needs for each member. And we also do our work entirely confidentially, so you can have complete confidence that the work that we do for you isn't going anywhere but to us. So please come to us with any questions or concerns or research requests that you might have. And that's it for that statement. As the committee will remember, AB 443 of the last session revised the interim structure and essentially combined the 2 judiciary committees into one smaller interim committee and sort of covers the jurisdictions of both those committees from session, which were slightly different depending on which house you were in. We won't go over the jurisdiction of the committee right now. It's vast. We can provide you with documentation on what chapters the committee covers, but the brief covers a little bit more than I will right now. One thing that I do want to note, which the chair already mentioned, and which is going to be a big part of our workload, is that the ACAJ is no longer in existence. And so a lot of those responsibilities have come over to this committee. A couple of them we'll touch on later today, and a couple of them we won't. But that's a big portion of our work, as is the elimination of the Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice Committee. I think the members probably are aware, but the public might not be, that our committee, the Judiciary Committee, is now in charge of the juvenile justice portion of that prior committee, and the Health and Human Services Committee is now in charge of the child welfare portion. So there may be crossover between the committees at some point. We may have a joint meeting. I don't know. That's up to the chairs. But those 2 issues have been separated. So if you're a child welfare advocate or interested party in any way, you may want to just keep an eye on what Health and Human Services is doing as well. This committee has 8 meetings scheduled through the interim. They are on the second Friday of every month from now until August, at which point we will be holding our work session. So I would just note from a staff perspective that while our work plan does show, we're going to focus on X subject on X date, that August work session, as the committee members are aware, will be the point at which we are actually going through requests and plans from the committee members and stakeholders and approving BDR. So while you may have a presentation that comes up in March, that doesn't mean that you have to have your idea fully formed and your BDR ready to go in March. It means that you've provided the information and started the discussion, and we will continue to work on those issues all the way until August. So I don't want anybody to feel like you've got to do all your interim work in a month or 2. So next, I would just note that we have 15 BDRs for the committee, 5 of which are dedicated to juvenile justice subjects. The brief also contains a list of agency and other contacts, and we will continue to update that list throughout the interim as we hear from more interested parties and perhaps experts from around the country, who knows, whatever. But if you see something missing from the contact list that you would like us to add to it, please let us know. And if you have an interest in a subject and there is no contact on the contact list, please ask us and we will help you run down whoever it is that you need to find. And lastly, you've also been provided today a list of relevant reports that come to the legislature. Some come to Judiciary, some go to other places. That's something that we think is worthy of review, that list, and the areas where those reports go to. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane now to go through some of that and some other information. And I think that's it for me. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Patrick. Again, Diane Thornton for the record. So starting on page 3, like Patrick said, there's a list of relevant reports. This includes everything from legislative committees, Nevada Judiciary, executive branch agency, and also the research and audit divisions. I just wanted to kind of bring light a couple reports, ones that were supposed to go to the now defunct Juvenile Justice and Child Welfare Committee, ACHA, and also industrial programs, which now our committee is responsible for. So it's just highlight on page 6. You'll see there's several bills from last session that required reports from the Division of Child and Family Services, and those all have due dates this year. And so we'll be reviewing those reports. Then on page 8 of the brief, you'll see that at the top of the page, there's a report due from the Fund for New Construction of Facilities for Prison Industries, and they must submit, before expending any funds, a proposal of expenditures to this committee. And then on the next page, on page 9, I just wanted to highlight a couple of reports that are due from the Nevada Department of Corrections. One specifically is on AB 241, which you heard during public comment about the credits due to prisoners. Another one is supposed to be submitted to the Committee on Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice, and that was relating to juvenile detention and trends and other information. And the other one is related to housing of youthful offenders. And then in the last pages of your brief, you'll just find some contact information for some of the agency contacts that you'll be hearing from during this interim. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. I think that gives us a good overview and also an appreciation for the breadth of this committee and how much we have to cover. So unless there are questions on that point, I think we can go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4, which is our predecessor to the fun part, which is agenda item number 5, where we all get your assignments. So on agenda item number 4, I'm going to let the staff give a brief overview of some of the topics that we came up with, you guys came up with. Some of them are directly from members of this committee. They're not exhaustive, but I just thought that this kind of covers like 5 or so areas that we definitely have to discuss this interim. And then we'll move on to expand it to anything and everything and figure out how we're going to get it all done. So, Mr. Gannon and Ms. Thornton, if you would go ahead and start that review, please.
Thanks again, Chair Schaible. Patrick Gannon for the record. So, yeah, we broke this up into specific areas of priority. And again, Diane and I will share talking about some of these topics. And in large part, I mean, corrections is a great example. You've heard already this morning from several speakers about issues that need to be addressed in corrections. And so what I'm going to do is just add a couple more issues to that, beginning with corrections. And these are primarily in response to bills that were passed last session. We have Senate Bill 22, which was changes made to inmate charges and accounts based on how the Department of Corrections had dealt with Marcy's Law expenses. And so that was a long discussion last session, and it ultimately got worked out with some new formulas for accounts and charges, but that's something that the committee will probably want to review. We have a Sentencing Commission report on reinvestment savings that's going to be coming. That's required from AB 236 of 2019. And I know that the Sentencing Commission has already reached out to the committee and is eager to work with us. So I imagine we'll be hearing from them shortly. AB 241, sentence credits during emergencies, we've covered at length today, so I won't go farther into that. AB 443 is the Committee on Industrial Programs that Diane mentioned, which is now our oversight responsibility, and our fiscal staff will be helping us make sure that we address that committee appropriately and don't hinder their work in terms of their requests for funding or improvements on projects. And that's it for corrections right now. Short list, but I think you can all see that that list is going to grow. And then the other subject that I'm most familiar with is juvenile justice, so I'm going to run through a few of those. Some of them Diane's already mentioned. We have AB 132, which required a new Miranda warning for juveniles and custodial interrogation, so the committee may want to look into how that's working out. We have AB 158, which reduced penalties for minor drug and alcohol infractions, so we will want to look into that, I imagine. AB 251, which deals with sealing of records for juveniles, and there may be some issues to look into there for persons who are between the ages of 18 and 21, and how that process is working out and whether it needs to be reviewed and or amended. And then we have AB 443, which is requiring DHHS to report on the program for juvenile sex offenders by the end of this month. So we'll want to be taking a look at that. Senate Bill 108 requires implicit bias training for juvenile justice employees, and we'll be looking into that one as well. And then we have several reports and studies that were assigned outside of the legislature for other entities to do. SB 356 requires the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission to report on housing alternatives for youthful offenders. That grows out of some child welfare and juvenile justice work from the previous interim, looking at the way our system handles young offenders between the ages of 18 and 25. Senate Bill 357 requires the Department of Corrections to report on how much of the budget at Lovelock and DOC generally is allocated to youth who have been tried as adults and who are housed at Lovelock. That was never previously broken out, so we'll be getting that information. And then we have another report from DCFS on the effectiveness of front-end diversionary programs for youth, and if that, I believe that's primarily focused on whether funds are being spent in an effective way on front-end diversion programs. And then finally, I'll just note that we have the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission is also going to give us their 5-year plan update. That normally would have been reported to the Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice Commission in the past, or committee in the past. So that's it for juvenile justice issues. I'm sure more will pop up as they did with corrections, but that sort of gives you a sense of just how much there is out there in juvenile justice, and that's just scratching the top. And then the last topic I have is sex offender registration. This is kind of a long succession of events, but Senate Bill 161 from last session did away with the advisory committee to study laws concerning sex offenders, which was housed in the Attorney General's office, and sent those responsibilities to the ACAJ, and then we did away with the ACAJ. So we now have the responsibility of continuing or disbanding, or, well, not disbanding, but doing away with a specific area of study on sex offender registration. So that would require reaching out to the Attorney General's office and perhaps the previous members of that committee and other stakeholders to determine if there's more work to be done on the way Nevada deals with sex offender registration. So that's it for my update on topics of interest, and I'll turn it over to Diane for more.
Thanks, Patrick. Diane Thornton again. So with reports of human trafficking on the rise and Nevada not being immune, legislature has passed over the last several years a myriad of bills to address this topic. And so last session, we passed Assembly Bill 143, which provided a continuum of care and services for all victims of trafficking, and also requires the Division of Child and Family Services to develop a statewide plan for the delivery of those services. And then the bill also goes on to create the State of Nevada Human Trafficking Coalition to help maximize resources for local task force. One of the other bills that was passed was Assembly Bill 182, which provides that a person who owns, leases, operates, controls, or manages any business or private property is guilty of the crime of advancing prostitution. We'll also be looking at Assembly Bill 113, which extended the statute of limitations to prosecute sex trafficking crimes. The next one also is we expanded law enforcement's ability to prosecute these crimes as well with the passage of Assembly Bill 64, which grants concurrent jurisdiction to the Attorney General to prosecute a person for facilitating sex trafficking, engaging in prostitution, or soliciting for prostitution. And then in a better effort to distinguish between those who illegally solicit prostitution and those who may be victims of self-trafficking, Senate Bill 164 revises Nevada law by separating provisions relating to the prohibition against prostitution from those concerning the solicitation for prostitution. And so these will all be topics of focus for this committee, and the committee can either follow up on these implementation of these bills or also look at other policies to protect this vulnerable population. The next priority topic deals with summary evictions. And according to testimony from last session, Nevada has the greatest mismatch in the nation in supply and demand of affordable housing. So there was a lot of talk about summary eviction in that process last session. And just as kind of a little background, there's two ways to initiate an eviction action in the state of Nevada. The first is filing and serving a formal civil eviction known as an unlawful detainer. And then the second is using the summary eviction procedures, which of course the summary eviction procedures is generally a simpler and quicker process than the unlawful detainer. Just to note, the summary eviction can't be used against tenants of mobile home parks. It can only be used when the only issue to be adjudicated by the court during the proceeding is possession of the rental unit. So we did pass Assembly Bill 141, which required the courts to automatically seal records relating to summary evictions during the pandemic. And then another bill that failed the deadline would have studied this topic. And that bill, just to give you some ideas of what the committee might consider under summary evictions, that bill would have looked at the laws and rules of other states relating to evictions. It was going to look at any requirements relating to the serving notice of actions for evictions, any oversight provided by the courts, the circumstances which trigger any action for eviction, including those actions relating to no-fault evictions, the ability of tenants and landlords to initiate and defend actions for summary eviction, and the deadlines mandated by the actions for summary evictions. So those are just some of the issues that the committee may wish to examine on that topic. The next topic I'm going to talk about is sexual assault. So last session, Assembly Bill 214 was passed, and that required the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice to appoint a subcommittee to conduct an interim study of laws governing sexual assault. So by default, that is now under our jurisdiction, and that committee was to study the laws governing sexual assault in the state, and also the laws in other states and territories of the United States. And then it was also required to get recommendations and input from attorneys, victims, and any other stakeholders concerning the necessary changes to the laws governing sexual assault. Then the last one is the implementation of previous legislation. And this just looks at things that were passed in the previous legislative sessions and that we may want to review and amend. The first one is AB 236, which you all might remember from the 2019 session. And this, of course, did a significant step forward in our criminal justice reform. And of course, with such a large, massive bill, there's always refinements. And last session, the legislature passed Assembly Bill 393, which fine-tuned AB 236. And those revisions included changes related to pre-sentence investigation reports, parole and probation, vehicle embezzlement, cannabis, and sex offenders petitioning for release from lifetime supervision. In addition, the bill requires the Nevada Sentencing Commission to calculate, with assistance of the Department of Sentencing Policy, the costs avoided each fiscal year. And then the commission has to prepare a biennial report with any of those savings from that. And then the committee will also be able to follow up on these issues and then any other needed adjustments to the law for concerning AB 236. Another bill that made some major changes to the law last session was AB 116, which makes most minor traffic violations civil rather than criminal infractions. Essentially, this just means that breaking a minor traffic law in Nevada is no longer a criminal offense. The bill defined which traffic and vehicle violations are misdemeanors and established court procedures for processing civil infractions in traffic and related offenses. And then it also made some appropriations to DPS, the Department of Public Safety, to make system upgrades. So the committee will have the opportunity to get updates on the implementation of this law and any other matters. Thank you, Chair. That's the last topic.
All right. So certainly just, a few things for us to do this interim. Absolutely doable by 1 or 2 people. I hope the record will reflect that was well-intentioned sarcasm, because we just have a huge workload for this committee. But I know that we are up to the task, and people have already been reaching out to me about projects they would like to work on. So I would like to open the floor up for the members to start giving us some ideas of what they would like to take the lead on, and we can get some of that in writing and start planning for the rest of the year.
I can start, Chair Schaible, if that's okay. I was taking a look at it. I would love to take kind of the lead on arranging and looking at some of the stuff on May 13th, which is, generally scheduled for that day, which includes like the courts, the sentencing commission, and bail and pretrial release. I might, if at all possible, try to put some other stuff about follow-up, I think, with 236, which I think kind of goes in line with the sentencing commission and some of the work that they are doing there, as well as looking at some of the implementation problems or issues or concerns with 116, AB 116. I don't know if that is. I also have an interest in the gaming and general updates and some gaming topics in there that I think would be useful for our committee. And I know that we have talked, and you had a wonderful idea that if members are taking the lead on these, if you think about presenting them in terms of the way you would present like a pseudo BDR, like during a normal committee hearing, I think that would be really helpful. So when we get to our August work session meeting, we have a better idea of what those bills would actually look like. So I know that we got a lot of great ideas in public comment. And so I think that gives all the members on here that are going to be delegated some work, some ideas, and some people to reach out with to start that process of what those BDRs might actually look like. So I appreciate, Chair, you working through and talking those ideas with me. And I would encourage the other members to do that. So don't everyone all raise their hand all at once, but I know that me and Chair Schaible will call on you because we know people that are like destined to take on some of these bigger topics. So I'll pass that on.
Go ahead, Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair Schaible. I would be most interested in working on the summary eviction topic that is going to be on the June 10th agenda. I might hopefully not biting off more than I can chew since I'm a newbie, but this is really important in my community and would appreciate help from anyone who would be interested in helping on that. And I would like to back up whoever is going to be on some of the Department of Corrections issues. One in particular that was discussed earlier was the changes to, oh my goodness, the credits, the good time credits, and some of those other topics to do with the how funds are being taken care of under the Marcy's law, and any other topics. I can take on a few, not too many, but a couple of things I'd like to help out where I can. So thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. I think it would be great, Assemblymember, if you would kind of take the lead on the summary eviction process and bring as many people into the conversation as you can. And I saw Assemblymember Marzola raise her hand around the same time. I'm not sure if you were responding to that or something else, but why don't you go ahead and let us know?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm interested in a few things. The human trafficking of February 11. So the human trafficking, the sexual assault kit, domestic violence. So pretty much everything relating to February 11. And I am also interested in the summer evictions and anything I can do to help in that arena.
Great. Then I will assign you as our point person for the sexual assault study and the human trafficking. And I say study, I mean, conversations about changes we might want to make to the sexual assault definitions. And I know that that's something that the Coalition to Prevent Sexual and Domestic Violence was very interested in last session. And I'm sure that you've worked with them before to, kind of review some of that, as well as the human trafficking component, which I'd be happy to partner with you on. And I'll expect you to help out Assemblymember Summers Armstrong with summary eviction conversation. And we appreciate it. Senator Harris also had her hand raised. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Assemblymember Marzola.
I just wanted to say thank you, Chair.
All right, Senator Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to work on anything that's a straggler at the end once people express their preferences. But I'm most interested in working on law enforcement, the corrections issues, and possibly assisting Vice Chair Nguyen on the bail and pretrial release, since that's something we've been working on together for quite some time now.
I think that would be fantastic. So I will ask you to be our point person for the corrections community, and also to work with Vice Chair Nguyen on the bail and pretrial release. And let's see who else might be volunteering before they're voluntold to take on.
I would like to voluntold Assemblyman O'Neill. I think he would work well on some of these law enforcement topics that I think are currently scheduled for July 8th. Look, I'm looking at you.
All right, Assemblymember O'Neill, you and Senator Harris will be taking the lead on our law enforcement topics coming up in July. And maybe I will see if Assemblymember Krasner would be interested in taking on some issues related to juvenile justice and record sealing. And what else, Assemblymember?
Yes, I would be very happy to help out with the juvenile justice issues and the sealing of records. I mean, obviously, I'm interested in all of these topics. They're all very important. And that's why I'm on Judiciary and have been for 3 sessions. And I am very sorry, but I don't see where we're discussing what topic on what date. I'm pulling up that email, but I'm not finding it. Could we just have staff super briefly tell us, like, at this meeting, we're going over this topic, so I know that I'll be able to plan for those?
Yeah, so you can actually find it. It's an exhibit to our meeting is the Judiciary Committee work plan. And it also is not set in stone. So if there is a reason to move a topic from one date to another, we can absolutely do that. And Assemblymember Krasner, if you're on your email right now, I can just email it to you.
Yes, that would be great. I'm also very interested in the sexual issue issue. You talked about maybe one or a group of people sitting down with survivors of sexual assault or industry that are knowledgeable about sexual assault, and maybe asking them what issues they see that need to be changed or modified. And that would be something I'd be very interested in doing. And would love the help of anybody who wants to help.
Great. I think if you and Assemblymember Marzola want to put your heads together on how best to do that, that would be fantastic. All right. I am missing a couple of people. Senator Pickard, are you interested in taking on one of these projects for the interim?
I appreciate the offer. I can do whatever is necessary wherever the need is. I was looking actually at the June 10th topics. I have practical experience in all of those, but that's the one meeting I may not be able to attend. So, I'm happy to help any other way I can. I'm happy to participate in those, but again, that may be a meeting I have to miss. I currently have a trial set for that day. So who knows if that trial will go forward, as you well know. But if it does, I will not be available. So I'm happy to support in any other way.
All right. Like I said, they're not set in stone, so that would be a perfect reason to adjust our schedule. But yeah, if you would be willing to work with our esports commission and bring back any updates that they have. And that's the main one that sticks out to me, but
Sure.
anything else that you
Sure.
think?
I mean, I used to represent litigants in summary eviction proceedings. I'm the president this year of the National Council of Legislators from gaming states. So, and I have some experience there. Esports is wrapped up in that as well. And then, of course, the charitable events is as well. So in any event, happy to do whatever we need to do.
Great. I'm going to ask you to follow up on all of those topics and report back with, other areas we might need to explore, other agenda items we might need to add for future meetings. And like Assemblymember Nguyen said, maybe come up with something of a BDR policy proposal if there's a need.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Senator Pickard, this is Rochelle. If you want to meet, and I think there's some flexibility, obviously, in those BARDA no-way dates that we can always potentially swap other things with other topics if necessary. But I'll reach out to you as well.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. And Assemblymember O'Neill. Anything in particular pique your interest?
Besides all of them, you've already picked on me once with law enforcement. I think if you're looking for corrections, probably dovetails into law enforcement. They're related just as the courts and sentencing are. So really, Chair, I'm here for your service and what you would like.
All right, I appreciate that. And I will ask you to work with Senator Harris on both the corrections issues and the law enforcement issues. I think that generally covers, we have Senator Harris and Assemblymember O'Neill working on corrections. We have Assemblywoman Krasner working on juvenile justice. We have Assemblymember Marzola and Krasner working on human trafficking and sexual assault. We have Assemblymember Summers Armstrong and Marzola working on summary evictions. We have Senator Pickard working on gaming issues, charitable events, and esports. We had a couple of other topics come up during that conversation that I failed to note, but kind of related to those issues. Oh, the pretrial release and bail that Assemblymember Nguyen and Senator Harris will be working on. Mr. Guy and Ms. Thornton, did I miss anything that we had previously outlined as something that our committee is responsible for covering?
Chair, this is Patrick Gannon for the record. I don't believe so. I think it would be probably prudent for Diane and I at this point to just review the list and the minutes from today and the assignments that everyone's gotten, and then if there is anything that fell through the cracks, we can alert you to that. I am not seeing anything off the top of my head. I can't think of anything to add, and I'll just let Diane chime in if she has something. Thank you.
All right. So it sounds like we covered most everything. And again, this is not a set in stone list either. So I hope as you dive into these topics, you will find other topics of interest or focus in more narrowly. And of course, we can, I'll caution us about adding things to our agenda because it already is very large, but certainly if there's something that you want to explore and you're willing to take on that responsibility, I'm happy to offer the Interim Judiciary Committee as a platform and as a structure for vetting ideas for you or any other member, frankly, of the legislature who has a topic that they want to, like I said, vet through the committee, which I think would be a good time. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Ms. Okrent, but I was hoping that you can give us just a little reminder about the open meeting law as we work through these topics, because it is, of course, my intent to, as I said before, include more people in this process, not to exclude people in this process. And so I just want you all to keep in mind that while it is good to be working with stakeholders and community members, it is not good to be having meetings among legislators without properly notifying the public. And if there's anything else you want to mention, Ms. Okrent.
Sure thing. Carly Okrent for the record. I'm just making sure. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of problems. Okay, I'm assuming people can see me and hear me, hopefully. Okay, perfect. Okay, so as you guys are all familiar, the legislature is not subject to the open meeting law, but it's important to the work of this committee that the meetings comply with the spirit and intent of the open meeting law. So just as a friendly reminder, the open meeting law applies to meetings at which a quorum of members are present to deliberate toward a decision or take action. So when you guys are exploring these topics that you've been discussing, I would just encourage you to consider that in the absence of a quorum, members are allowed to privately discuss public issues or even lobby for votes. However, if a quorum is present or is gathered by something called serial communication, so one of you emailing and another one emailing and so on and so forth in a manner that includes a quorum of you, you want to make sure that you're complying with the open meeting law and not deliberating toward a decision. Is that, does that cover what you were looking for, or can I add anything to that?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Okay. And I know that all of our members always strive to comply. So if you have any questions or run into any concerns, please feel free to reach out to me, to reach out to our staff, and we're happy to clarify. Well, I'm not the expert. I'm happy to get somebody to clarify for you any open meeting questions. And go ahead, Assemblymember Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify then, these discussions, such as Senator Harris and I will be having with various stakeholders, do I understand you want them? To me, they would be best announced ahead of time and scheduled for certain dates and times. The legislative building would be available, or at least Zoom meetings. Staff would be available to coordinate. Are these exactly how did you plan these discussions, I'll call them, to operate? I need some clarification.
That is an excellent question. And as with everything at the legislature, our resources are limited. So certainly we'd be happy if there is a larger meeting that you plan to have and you want to notify the public in advance and have lots of testimony. We could talk to our staff about setting up a meeting like this or at a legislative building. But for the most part, these would be smaller discussions and, as Ms. O'Krent said, not aimed towards coming to a decision. I think that is the main difference between a violation of an open meeting law versus a productive discussion, is as long as you're working with people to talk about, what is the problem, what are some various solutions, that's all fine. And that can be in a conference room or a private Zoom meeting or however you choose to communicate. The problem is if you start going through options and say, this is the one that we're going to do, or email me and say, hey, Chair, I think that, this is the bill that we should pass. As long as we're bringing to the table a number of options so that this body can discuss in, a democratic fashion which proposals we're going to move forward. And that is all done publicly. That complies with the spirit of the open meeting law.
Will travel funds be available then for the members? Because I'm up north, Senator Harris is down south, for us to actually get together face to face with these various community of interest groups to discuss the options, or?
Chair, if I may, Assemblyman O'Neill, I have lots of ideas about how we can coordinate and work together. As you mentioned, since you're up north and I'm down south, we'll likely have to do a lot of these type of Zoom meetings virtually. I'm happy to come up north and possibly meet with you in person at least once as we work through some of these issues. But let's start off with exchanging our contact information, and we'll chat offline about different ideas. Since there's only two of us, we aren't anywhere close to a quorum and don't have to worry about violating open meeting laws or the spirit of the open meeting law. But I've got lots of ideas of how we can get started.
Great, I appreciate that. I look forward to being with you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Other questions, other thoughts before we wrap up this portion of our discussion? All right, I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand. So technically, agenda item number 5 is a review of the committee work plan. For the sake of our record, I do want to make sure we hit every agenda item. So I think that we have covered everything. Again, that work plan is available to members and also to the public on our website. It's an exhibit to our meeting. And as I mentioned before, that just includes some general topics, and they're not set in stone, but the purpose in giving everything a date was to make sure that we didn't get to August and forget something or run out of time for anything. So are there any questions, comments, suggestions on the work plan? All right, then the only other thing that we have on our agenda today is public comment. Before we get to public comment, I would just one more time like to ask the members of the committee if there's anything else that they wanted to discuss in this inaugural meeting that maybe didn't get covered under one of our other topics. All right, I don't see anything. So let's go ahead and go again to our public comment section. And is there anybody on the line to give public comment?
Yes, Chair Schaible, thank you. One moment. If you would like to offer public comment on today's meeting, please press *9 or raise your hand in the Zoom window. Once more, that's *9 or raise hand. Thank you, Chair. It appears there are no callers wishing to offer public comment at this time.
All right, then. Having no other business before the committee today, our next meeting will be on Friday, February 11th, also at 9 a.m. And we are now adjourned.